If the FBI took your phone today, would they get in? Most people think the answer depends on how good their password is. Maybe you use Face ID. Maybe you chose a 6-digit PIN instead of 4. Maybe you installed every software update the moment it appeared. We'd like to believe security is something we control. But what if the answer has already been decided? In 2024, a leaked document began circulating online. It came from a company called Cellebrite, one of the most important players in the digital forensics industry. If you've never heard of them, that's normal. Most people haven't. But many law enforcement agencies, intelligence services, and forensic investigators know the name very well. Buried inside the leak was a spreadsheet. At first glance, it looked boring. Thousands of rows, device names, model numbers, software versions, the kind of document nobody would ever read for fun. But there was one detail that made it fascinating. Next to each phone was a status. Green, yellow, red. Green meant investigators had a working method to access the device. Yellow meant support was being developed. Red meant not yet. No method had been found yet. The spreadsheet covered thousands of phones, iPhones, Samsung devices, Google Pixels, Motorola's, older models, brand new models, devices owned by millions of people. Most people imagine phone hacking as a one-time event. A breakthrough, a miracle. Some genius discovers a vulnerability, presses a few keys, and suddenly a locked phone spills all of its secrets. The real world doesn't work like that. Instead, there's an entire ecosystem built around the problem. Companies hire researchers. Researchers discover vulnerabilities. Engineers turn those discoveries into products. Governments and law enforcement agencies license those products. New phones are tested, new techniques are developed, new vulnerabilities are found. Then the cycle starts again. One of the most well-known tools in this world is called UFED, short for Universal Forensic Extraction Device. The name sounds futuristic. The reality is surprisingly ordinary. It's essentially a forensic platform designed to help investigators extract information from digital devices. Depending on the device, the operating system, and the available vulnerabilities, it may be able to retrieve data that would otherwise be difficult to access. That's the key thing most people misunderstand. There isn't one universal technique. There isn't one master key. Every phone is different. Every operating system is different. Every software update changes the rules. An exploit that works today may stop working tomorrow. A device that was considered secure last year might become vulnerable next year. That's why leaked documents like the Cellebrite spreadsheet are so revealing. They show a constantly changing battlefield rather than a permanent advantage. And that's also why investigators often care about timing. A phone seized today may present very different opportunities than the same phone seized 6 months from now. The challenge isn't simply getting access. The challenge is getting access before the opportunity disappears. Which brings us to another misconception. Most people assume the biggest obstacle is the phone itself. Sometimes it is. But sometimes the easiest way into a device isn't through the software at all. Sometimes it's through the person holding it. For years, technology companies have encouraged us to replace passwords with biometrics. Touch the sensor, look at the screen, unlock the device. It's fast, it's convenient. And in many situations, it's genuinely secure. But convenience and security aren't always the same thing. Understand why. Imagine two different scenarios. In the first, a phone is protected by a long passphrase that exists only inside the owner's memory. In the second, the phone is protected by a fingerprint or facial scan. Technically, both systems are designed to prevent unauthorized access. Legally, however, things become more complicated. Courts around the world have spent years debating the distinction between something you know and something you are. A memorized passcode may be treated differently from a fingerprint. A fingerprint may be treated differently from a face scan. The exact rules vary depending on where you are, which court is involved, and how the law evolves over time. But regardless of the legal details, there is an important practical lesson. A password can remain private inside your head. Your face cannot. Your fingerprint cannot. You leave fingerprints on glasses, phones, keyboards, and door handles every single day. Your face is visible to everyone who looks at you. That doesn't mean biometrics are bad. For most people, they provide an excellent balance between convenience and security. But it does mean they solve a different problem than a passphrase. A passphrase is a secret. A fingerprint is an identifier. And those are not the same thing. Security professionals often talk about threat models. In simple terms, a threat model means asking one question. Who are you trying to protect yourself from? For most people, the answer is ordinary criminals, thieves, pickpockets, random attackers. For those threats, biometrics are fantastic. But if you're worried about investigators, border searches, targeted surveillance, or other high-risk situations, the calculation changes. Suddenly, the difference between a secret and an identifier becomes much more important. And even then, there's another problem. Because no matter how good your biometrics are, no matter how strong your passphrase is, every security system eventually runs into the same enemy. It always comes back to mathematics, the ultimate enemy. Most people think passwords are either strong or weak, secure or insecure, good or bad. Reality is more complicated, because the strength of a password isn't really about the password itself. It's about time. Imagine a vault with a combination lock. If somebody gets one attempt every hour, that lock is incredibly secure. If they get 1,000,000 attempts every second, it suddenly looks much less impressive. The same principle applies to your phone. Modern smartphones aren't protected by passcodes alone. They're protected by systems designed to slow attackers down. Enter the wrong code enough times and the device begins imposing delays. Try again. Wait. Try again. Wait longer. Some devices can eventually lock themselves. These protections exist because passwords aren't magical. They're mathematics. A 4-digit PIN has 10,000 possible combinations. A 6-digit PIN has 1,000,000. At first glance, 1,000,000 sounds enormous. It isn't. Not to a computer. A truly strong passphrase works differently. Every additional character dramatically increases the number of possible combinations. Add letters, add numbers, add symbols, make it longer. Suddenly the numbers become difficult to comprehend. Millions become billions, billions become trillions. Eventually, the attack stops being practical. This is why security experts obsess over password length. Not because they're trying to make your life harder, because mathematics doesn't care about opinions. Mathematics doesn't care about confidence. Mathematics doesn't care if your password feels secure. The numbers either work in your favor or they don't. Imagine discovering a vulnerability that nobody else knows exists. Not Apple, not Google, not Samsung, not cybersecurity researchers, nobody. For a brief period of time, you are the only person on Earth who knows the weakness exists. That kind of vulnerability has a name, a 0-day. The term comes from a simple idea. The vendor has had 0 days to fix it because they don't even know it's there. To the average person, a software vulnerability might not sound particularly valuable. To governments and intelligence agencies, it can be worth millions. Entire markets have emerged around buying and selling these discoveries. Security researchers uncover vulnerabilities. Brokers connect buyers and sellers. Governments compete for capabilities that provide strategic advantages. The prices can be staggering. A vulnerability capable of compromising modern smartphones remotely can command sums that rival luxury homes, sometimes more. The reason is simple: information is power, and access creates information. One of the most famous examples is Pegasus, a spyware platform developed by the Israeli company NSO Group. Over the years, investigations by journalists and human rights organizations have linked Pegasus to surveillance campaigns, targeting activists, journalists, political opponents, lawyers, and government officials around the world. What made Pegasus so alarming wasn't just its capabilities. It was the possibility that a target might never realize it was there. No suspicious download, no obvious warning, no dramatic hacking scene. Just a compromise happening quietly in the background. The existence of tools like Pegasus reveals an uncomfortable truth about cybersecurity. Being careful isn't always enough. Security updates matter. Lockdown features matter. Reducing your attack surface matters. But if somebody possesses a vulnerability that nobody else knows exists, your options become limited until that vulnerability is discovered and patched. That's what makes 0-day so valuable and so dangerous. Fortunately, most people will never be targeted by $1 million exploit. The vast majority of investigations don't involve nation-state spyware or secret vulnerabilities worth fortunes, because there is a much cheaper way to get information, a method that's older than computers, older than smartphones, older than the internet itself. And in the end, you simply ask. When most people imagine a phone investigation, they picture advanced technology, expensive software, government laboratories, teams of engineers searching for vulnerabilities. And sometimes that's exactly what happens, but not always. Because the cheapest way into a phone is often the oldest. Human beings. A passcode written on a sticky note. A password reused across multiple accounts. Family member who knows it. A friend who saw it. A conversation that reveals more than intended. A moment of panic, a moment of trust, a moment of carelessness. Technology tends to get all the attention because technology feels mysterious. Human behavior doesn't. Yet again and again, some of the most sophisticated security systems in the world have been bypassed, not by breaking the technology, but by exploiting the people using it. Security professionals sometimes joke that users are the weakest link. It's a cliché, but clichés survive for a reason. The reality is that information has a way of leaking. People forget. People write things down. People share secrets. People make mistakes. And investigators notice. Which is why phone security isn't just about software. It's about habits. It's about what you've revealed, who you've trusted, and how much information exists outside the device itself. But even that isn't the biggest vulnerability, because there is one mistake that millions of people make every day, a mistake that can render everything we've discussed so far less important. And the most surprising part? You probably made it yourself. To everything we've discussed, it's tempting to become paranoid, to assume that every phone is vulnerable, every system is compromised, every defense is pointless. That's the wrong lesson, because security isn't about becoming impossible to attack. It's about becoming significantly harder to attack than you were yesterday. And fortunately, there are a few things that genuinely move the needle. The first is surprisingly simple. Use a strong passphrase, not a 4-digit PIN, not a 6-digit PIN, a real passphrase. Long, unique, difficult to guess. Every additional character increases the amount of work required to attack it. Good security often starts with boring decisions, and this is one of them. Second, understand your biometric settings. Fingerprints and facial recognition are incredibly convenient, and for most people they provide excellent security. But convenience should be a conscious choice, not an automatic one. Know when you're using biometrics and know how to disable them if necessary. Third, keep your device updated. This advice is repeated so often that people stop listening to it. But updates remain one of the most effective defenses available. Every patch closes vulnerabilities that somebody, somewhere, may already know how to exploit. Fourth, review your backup settings. Understand what information is being copied, where it's being stored, and who controls access to it. Most people spend more time choosing a phone case than reviewing the settings that govern their digital lives. And finally, if your threat model genuinely requires stronger protection than most users need, consider hardened platforms and security-focused operating systems. These solutions aren't necessary for everyone, but they exist for a reason. Some users face risks that go far beyond ordinary crime. The important thing is understanding your own situation.